is a wide variety of historic architecture in this region, but one of the most important threads running through it is the Creole aspects of it. And when I say Creole, that requires some definition because there are many different meanings, connotations of the word Creole that are applied to everything from food to language, to music, to people. So when I say Creole in terms of architecture, I'm talking about what's really the colonial meaning of the word, which is born here, of this place, but with ancestry from abroad, from Europe, from Africa, from both. So it's really something that's of this place, and you can see that in the architecture.
There's no one single design of a manor house, okay? The manor houses began to appear at the end of the Spanish period, Whitehall, Plantation, St. James Parish, one of the first, the Boulanger family. And they go all the way up to the end of the antebellum period where they're being constructed. Well, that period, that's a 60-year period, 70-year period. Architecture changed, design changed. So there's no one single plantation house. They're big, other than saying they're big houses, but the designs change through time. And so if you look at the plantation houses, the earliest ones are going to follow the French colonial style. Sometimes I've heard it referred to as the Caribbean style plantation house.
One of the national styles that had a huge impact architecturally on the antebellum architecture of this region is the Greek Revival style. And it is the columns of the Greek Revival style especially that are really associated in the American imagination with the ideal of a plantation. This is sort of what we have in our mind's eye when we think of a plantation. But interestingly, in this area, the Greek Revival style did not completely wipe out the Creole design elements. So behind many of those columns are still Creole plans. Greek Revival architecture at the time in the United States was associated with democracy and with Greece. However, you see the obvious contradictions between that and a system of enslavement. In the plantation landscape, the Greek Revival design influences, and specifically the magnificent columns, really worked effectively to articulate the wealth and the social status of the owners. So people who would come down the river and see all of these plantations really witnessed this parade of magnificence that exuded the wealth that was being gleaned from the growth of sugar in this area with enslaved labor. Buildings were often constructed mostly by enslaved people, but some of them would have very specific skill sets. And you can see that in the construction of the buildings. These are highly detailed, finely crafted buildings that required an acute knowledge of the building craft.
These structures are of historic significance. Many of them had historic events take place on them. But they also reflect upon our culture, and for good and bad, okay? You can't visit some of these grand houses without getting a deep understanding of the institution of slavery, of how part of the population lived in an elite status, and large numbers were out in much lesser considerations.
I think one of the best ways we can really encounter our history and begin to experience it is to be in the places that were built by generations past.